morning to the Honorable Ministers of the Council, members of the media, radio listeners via St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM, Telems Tel TV Plus Channel 15, respective radio stations island-wide, and online viewers. I'm Rolika Roach, and welcome to the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, June 7th, 2023. At this time, I would like to invite the Honorable Minister of Tourism, Economic Affairs, Transport, and Telecommunication, the Honorable Arthur Lambrix, to address you. Minister Lambrix, you have the floor.
Good morning, Ms. Roach. Good morning to the press. Good morning to my colleague ministers. Good morning to those listening through the media and radio and other means. Thank you for tuning in. I just wanted to give a little brief on my recent trip to Aruba, also to Dominican Republic, where I went to do some fact-finding for agricultural purposes. I also went to the Aruba for a conference that we had and some MOUs that we had to sign for agricultural reasons between the sister islands. This was done to strengthen our, to make us more together than what we were, I guess, in the past, and also to share our views, our challenges, and have a sort of platform between the islands that we can more help each other with challenges, with information that we need to get something done. If we have an issue with probably maybe seeds or a certain crop, and it has been successful somewhere else, that they give us those guidelines and those ways forward and how to get that done. In the Dominican Republic also, I did some searching and I met with the port. That was more to establish how we can have better ties between the two countries to get that produce to the island quicker, so that we have a more better product that hasn't been frozen or takes that long course to get here. And when it gets to the island, it's not as fresh as what we would like it to have. And also, of course, with the price, to keep it as low as possible for our consumers. So more will be sent out later this week in the news about that and our ways forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Lambrix, for your opening remarks. At this time, I would like to invite the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs, Sylveria Jacobs, to address you. Prime Minister Jacobs, you have the floor.
Thank you, Rolika. Good morning to my colleague ministers, members of the press, and of course, our listening and viewing public of St. Martin, both here and abroad. It is my privilege to address you today as Prime Minister, and of course, seeing that we are midweek, usually, with our press briefing, and we can already feel the heat of our coming summer months. Though we are facing that, we are very much in tune and optimistic about our product, our St. Martin moving forward. There is potential, there's opportunity for growth, and of course, there is growing unity, not just within the island, but also across the border with our French northern partners, as well as Minister Lambrix has just mentioned, within the kingdom, within the Caribbean as well. Collaboration is key, and we will be more self-sufficient as we move forward when we collaborate, making effective use of our limited resources as island nations. Noting again that it is quite hot already, though our meteorological department has noted that it is not above normal. It might feel hotter based on the humidity level. So I encourage the people of St. Martin to continue to take the necessary precautions, drinking plenty of water, seeking shade when possible, also looking out for the vulnerable children and elderly especially, and wearing protective whether it's sun protection, hats, etc., while outside. In addition, we must also remain vigilant and prepared for the hurricane season. As residents of St. Martin, we, of course, are no stranger to the power and the unpredictability of natural disasters. And while we stay in a position of prayer for a calm season, it's also essential to be informed, have your plans in place, and be ready to respond swiftly. So also being prepared so that we can mitigate the impacts of the potential storms, as well as safeguard the well-being of our families and our communities, as well as our businesses. Amidst these considerations, people of St. Martin, I would like to continue to inform that we are actively working to enhance our disaster preparedness measures, collaborating with local as well as international partners to strengthen our infrastructure, improve early warning systems, and provide the necessary resources to ensure safety and security of our citizens during times of adversity. I'd like to take this time to also extend condolences and heartfelt sympathies to all those who are still experiencing the pain of losing loved ones, whether recently or in the past weeks and months. Even some as long as a year or more, we meet people who are still in some form of grief. Remain hopeful and continue to seek strength in prayer and through loved ones and friends. We look out for those persons in our community. I must say that I must commend the Dutch Quarter Community Council, recently established over the weekend. Commend the manner in which this group of eclectic group of persons show respect to their predecessors, still taking their advice, whether they're elderly or not, and stepping up to improve the quality of life of the district of Dutch Quarter with positivity and commitment to be the change they want to see in their communities. That is very commendable, as well as the close relationship they have with CPO, the CPO that has been there for years. Congratulations to you, as well as the efforts taken to step up to assist the fire victims, the recent fire victims, and the continued support from the community. We see the donations that are going out and continue to thank the community for that. I especially want to give a thank you and a commendation to the men and women of our fire department who, despite having difficulty to reach to the fire, did their utmost to save the surrounding buildings and went back to check on the victims, as well as the community also going into their pockets to donate to the victims and continue to seek ways and means to assist them. I know Government of St. Martin is working with the community as well to find solutions for those that are still in need. As you know, next week, June 13th, is Flag Day for St. Martin. That's the day we commemorate the design of our flag. As you may see, some have already started their decorations. It's already started here at our government building. It's a day when we come together to honor and pay tribute to this symbol that represents our identity, our unity, and our aspirations as a people. It is a powerful reminder of the progress. As you know, our banner reads, Semper Progrediens, always progressing. And we have had several challenges that we have overcome throughout our history. So we have a history of overcoming, and this serves as a beacon of hope, guiding us toward a future filled with promise and prosperity. As we prepare for the preparation and celebration of Flag Day, I encourage all St. Martin citizens to proudly raise our flags high, displaying it with honor and pride, and not only out of love for our nation, but also of our unwavering commitment to the principles of liberty, justice, and equality for all. Moreover, let us, even though we embrace diversity on St. Martin, remember that this is St. Martin's Day, St. Martin's Flag Day. So we must, it is not for you to highlight that, oh, I wasn't born here, so you fly another flag next to a St. Martin flag. We truly hope to see only St. Martin flags flying as a commitment to being here, contributing to here, and enjoying the freedoms that we have here as St. Martin. I would also like to remind others, though, that in celebrating your country of birth, Independence Day or whatever, it is not allowed for you to only fly that flag. Our flag protocol requires that you always fly the St. Martin flag, regardless of where you're originally from and whatever you are celebrating. So keep that in mind in respect and honor of St. Martin and our flag. Let us strive to uphold these ideals, fostering an environment of inclusivity, respect, and unity, but always remembering that we are St. Martin as a country. So I look forward to seeing the celebrations, though I will be away for work travel related to the Q meetings next week in The Hague with the French counterparts, as well as France and the Netherlands. I will be with you in spirit and hope to convey my message of hope on that day virtually. The Civil Registry is community within the Dutch Caribbean are currently meeting on St. Martin. They started on Monday, and today is their last day. This is a gathering to shed light on the vital aspect of life in the Caribbean part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. So it includes Aruba, Curaçao, St. Martin, Saba, Statia, and Bonaire. You may have heard the PIVA is a shortened version of Persoonsinformatievoorziening, so personal information. I'm pleased to welcome all our visitors, civil servants from around the kingdom, and I was pleased to be at their opening session. Wish them all fruitful discussions which would lead to impactful decisions, keeping our citizens of our respective countries and islands at the forefront of all these decisions and recommendations to our governments. We recognize the significance of accurate and efficient personal information provision within the Caribbean, encompassing the neighboring islands of Aruba, Curacao, and St. Martin as well. PIVA system serves as the backbone of our region's administration, enabling a seamless data exchange as well as fostering collaboration among the stakeholders that I mentioned before. As I mentioned today as well, today is the last day, and I wish them much success in those meetings. I was able to get an update. I know there have been questions recently, and I said I would give a response at the end of June, but I was able to get an update today that there are 58,477 registered persons within our registry, which still leaves us at 50 members of parliament currently. So based on the cleanup that has taken place, 58,477, which still keeps us at a parliament of 15, if it remains that way by that time. The project was based on having an accurate system and will help benefit the distribution of voting cards to the public. So again, with this being said, and especially after listening to a part of the opening statements at the PIVA convention, it is important that people ensure that their correct address is listed within our registry system. So we are going through this cleanup is based on persons either not communicating to written documentation sent to the address that we have registered, and there is a whole trajectory for that. So if you have received an email from the civil registry and have not responded, and you do not respond again after a second letter, you run the risk of being deregistered. So please, if you have changed your address within the past year, within the past 3 years or 4 years, whatever the case may be, and have not lived up to your obligation to notify civil registry, I'm hereby once again encouraging all persons to ensure that the correct address that you are currently residing at is also what is listed within civil registry of St. Martin. Last thing I have on the list is that last week we have launched the Ministry of General Affairs launched the information regarding the establishment, design, operation, and maintenance of an early warning system. That is one of the last projects through the EU, which is being facilitated by Resembid and carried out by the Department of the Interior and Kingdom Relations, known as BUC. So that project is also rolling out, which from those recommendations, then we will know which early warning system we will be purchasing, which will also be going through the same platform to receive. So that is it in terms of updates from the Ministry of General Affairs, and I look forward to any questions that would come forth from the media. Thank you, Alaika.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs, for your opening remarks. If you have just joined us, you are watching the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, June 7, 2023. Thank you so much for joining us. We now move on to the question and answer session. However, I would like to inform that the Honorable Minister of Justice, Anna Richardson, is present. However, will not be making any opening statements, but available for any questions the media may have. The floor is open, and Bibi Haj Shah of SMN News, you have the floor.
Good morning, Rolaika. Thank you. Good morning, ministers, and good morning, my colleagues. My question is for the Minister of TIAT, Minister Lambrix. Minister, it's been a few months now. I've received a number of emails and WhatsApp messages, phone calls from a particular person residing now in the Dominican Republic for quite some years, complaining about the agreement St. Martin has with Arajet, the fact that the controller here in St. Martin had suspended their landing permit at one point. I do not know all the details on this, but I'd like for you to expound on this and to tell us if there's any breach in the bilateral agreement between St. Martin and the the Netherlands, and the Dominican Republic.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw, for your question. I do feel compelled to address this recent, emails and misinformation that has been going around and circulating on social media. regarding Arajet. It is an airline based in the Dominican Republic and does have operations in St. Martin. It came to my attention that a certain individual who, after failed aviation endeavors in St. Martin's aviation sector and Curacao, now runs a paper airline company in the Dominican Republic. They have been making baseless accusations and distorting the facts in an apparent attempt to manipulate the public opinion. While his reasons for doing so still remain unknown, it looks like these actions stem more from either a spite or personal gain or maybe even political reasons. It is crucial to approach this matter with objectivity and separate personal motives from the facts at hand. I want to ensure that the information being shared on social media is misleading and fails to accurately reflect the reality. Arajet operates in St. Martin under an air transportation agreement, a treaty between St. Martin and the Dominican Republic. They have a valid air operator certificate, AOC, issued from the Dominican Republic Aviation Authorities, the IDAC. The AOC attests to their compliance with the safety standards and their ability to conduct the commercial air transport operations. The aviation authorities of St. Martin have assessed Arajet's operations and have determined that the AOC is still valid to date. I believe it expires in a year from now. This means that the operations have met the necessary safety and economic requirements. There is no issue to warrant the revocation of their landing rights in St. Martin. Furthermore, it is important to note that the aviation authorities of Curacao and Aruba also have no issues with Arajet. They are still flying. The airline company is free to operate flights to these destinations as well. Any claims suggesting otherwise on social media are unfounded or outdated and should be disregarded. I want to emphasize that the decision to grant or revoke landing rights is based on diligent evaluations conducted by the competent authorities, not my personal bias or anybody that has unsubstantiated claims. While I do welcome the constructive discussions and legitimate concerns, I do urge everyone to rely on accurate information and refrain from the spreading of unfounded rumors. A little further into that, I also have a response from the individual to their request that was sent. And just shortly, I can say a little quote from that email, thanking us, first of all, for the attached documents and that the files provided to me in this email might not be completed in totality, but I can say that I am not disappointed because thus far it has been the best progress in the communication sector regarding this aspect. So it's a little bit disappointing for me to see that, you know, we've responded and we've done everything that we have to do and that still these claims continue. But by law, nothing is out of the way or nothing is out of place. Everything is legal, everything is how it should be. So again, we will not be revoking anyone just based on someone's personal opinion or whatever their motive is. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Lambrix. Thank you, Bibi. I would now like to invite Andrew Dick of TV15. You have the floor.
Good morning, Ms. Rhodes. Good morning to the ministers present. Minister Lambrix, can we get an update again on the airport? I know that you had to get some information concerning the terminal building and also the moving of persons from downstairs into a tent. Can you clarify? And also for clarification, Prime Minister, the civil registry, you said 58,000 persons registered, but as far as the voters is concerned, how many voters do we have? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dick, for your question. The airport is still the same as the last press briefing that I attended. Still on schedule, no new delays, no new issues that have arisen. There is a monthly report that we are getting now from the airport. I'm still awaiting that. We should have that by Friday this week. It should be by us every first week of the new month for the previous month, so then I can see if there's anything that maybe I have not observed or have not been informed with. But so far, everything is still on plan for the airport and the reconstruction. The tent that you're mentioning, it is more of a prefab building that will be put up. That is for the arrivals when they're coming in, so that we can put full focus on the bottom half of the building and make sure to stay on track throughout the hurricane season and, you know, leading up to the finishing in the second quarter of next year. Thank you.
Prime Minister Jacobs.
Yes, thank you, Rolika and Mr. Dick. Based on the info I have, I asked for an update to be certain, but the This is the count at current, and I believe it is for registered, it says registered persons. So I have to confirm whether that's the number of registered voters or not. So I will double check and get that to you. If I get the answer before the end of press briefing, I'll update you. But the final count, of course, would be determined at the end of, let's say, the date that you close the registry for voting. That would be the date. I'm just giving an update as to what it is now because it's been asked on a weekly basis. So the number was, I repeat, 58,477. I'll have to confirm whether that is registered persons or whether that is eligible voters.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs, and thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Judy Fitzpatrick of the Daily Herald, you have the floor.
Thank you, and a very good morning, ministers, my colleagues. My first clarification, and then I'll go into my question, is for the Prime Minister, and it has, of course, to do with your announcement regarding the figures at the Department of Civil Registry. Can you indicate whether the cleanup is now finalized? It's not finalized. And I don't know if they provided you with the information as to how many persons so far have been deregistered, and are there any complaints or any feedback from persons who've been deregistered who are protesting that? And my question is also for you, Prime Minister, and it has to do with the potential sale of Mullet Bay that the Finance Minister alluded to last week. Now, the value of the property, the Mullet Bay property that Mr. Ansari used was actually based on a dubious valuation report. So my question is, what is the true value of Mullet Bay? Obviously, if there's a potential sale, there must be some indication as to what the true value is. Has the central bank already determined what that value is? Did they have any real estate experts draft any new appraisals or anything to that effect? And that would lead me into the other question, Prime Minister, is, given the fact that there is a potential sale of this property, is government interested in buying this prime piece of property for the people of St. Martin? Is this something that we have considered or will consider? Thank you so very much.
Okay, first, let me go into your question as it relates to the registrations, and I can clarify that the number mentioned is for all registered. So I saw Mr. Dick shaking his head, so you can clarify if I didn't answer your question, but that is for the total number of persons registered, including non-nationals. In terms of how many persons, if I have, no, this is not the final number. The cleanup is still ongoing. So on a daily basis, they're assessing persons. I mentioned a process of if persons haven't responded to initiative via mail. I have asked them at the convention to also seek alternative ways to communicate with persons if the mail isn't working. But that's what the law prescribes. So that's why I encourage persons who have changed their address to ensure that they live up to their responsibility, because sometimes you hear about persons who have died and a family member will say, well, I got a voting card for someone who has died, but if someone passes away in a foreign country, whether it's the US or somewhere else, and that is not conveyed to the Civil Registry Department, then they are still alive in our system. So also to persons who have family members living abroad who have passed away, who are still registered, that certificate of death also has to be brought into the Civil Registry to update our records. So that cleanup is still ongoing, and it is not yet finished. As it relates to what was mentioned related to the potential sale of Mullet Bay, I'm not privy to any information as to the value or intentions. We have not had discussions as a government regarding the intentions to purchase, so I cannot answer those questions at this time.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs, and thank you, Judy. We now move on to the second round. Bibi, you have the floor.
Thank you, Rolika. Minister Lambrix, when you first took office, there was a lot of talk about the marketplace and this project. Can you tell us if there is any update? What's the progress, and when exactly would this project begin?
The marketplace is still scheduled to continue. It's what we have decided to rebuild it. At present, it is at Rummy pending the business license approvals. And from there, we can push forward as soon as we get those, hopefully within a week or two, or three maybe. We should have them organized, and we can push forward with that project. But everything is still on plan for it, yes.
Thank you, Minister Lambrix. Thank you, Bibi. Andrew, you have the floor.
Thank you, Minister Lambrix. Concerning the airport once again, the contract of Mr. Brian Mingo, I believe that it's up this year. It's going to be up. Did you look into it, whether it's going to be renewed, or what's the Council of Ministers stance on the contract of Mr. Mingo? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. The exact date of that ending of the contract, I don't have it on hand at this moment, so I don't want to confirm anything about that, but I can always get that back to you in writing. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Andrew. Judy, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Prime Minister, the tentative date for the Kingdom Conference is set for December this year. Now, this is just 1 month prior to our next parliamentary election. And does it not make more sense to postpone the conference to after election? Why is it so important to have it in December? And I do have a quick follow-up for the Justice Minister. And you had mentioned, I believe 2 or 3 weeks ago, that an investigation is ongoing into the falsified insurance documents issue. Can you just provide us an update on that? Thanks.
Thank you for your question. The Kingdom Conference is that it's a Kingdom Conference. It's not a St. Martin Conference. The discussion has been had since last year about a possibility for one this year. I believe the Dutch government were the ones really pushing for it to happen on or around Kingdom Day, which is December 15th. The reason why it's actually in St. Martin is, or we finally agreed that this was a possibility, is because we didn't want, as St. Martin, to have to travel out so soon to elections. So this was recently, looking at the possibilities and then hearing that it was discussed in IPCO before a final confirmation had been made was a little bit disconcerting because, of course, the St. Martin delegation wasn't aware. So indeed, that clarity was only, let's say, finalized just before they traveled to the Netherlands. So it wasn't something that we had finalized that was official and in writing for us to be able to update anyone on it. But of course, members being in political circles would have heard that it had reached that far. So we're still in the process of determining how the conference will be done and then moving on to topics, etc. And so the determination thus far is that it's St. Martin, and it was based on the fact that it would be difficult for us to travel out at that time. So no possibility of it being postponed? There is a strong inclination that it's been part of the agenda for a while, and it was actually brought forth by a St. Martin, let's call it a member in the second chamber that heavily supports St. Martin and push it forward to get certain discussions going and to further delay discussions that are important for the whole kingdom based on elections for St. Martin, I don't think is warranted at this time. So we'll all have to, I think, for the first time, we're not talking about a snap election and 3 months preparation. Most people are already in the mood. By December, we should be, ready to go. So hopefully everyone would have done their convincing by then and can focus on having pertinent discussions for St. Martin in relation to kingdom and the way forward with this kingdom.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs. Minister Richardson.
Thank you. A pleasant good morning to all who are tuned in this morning, to my colleague ministers, the press, and of course, I always like to give a special good morning to our senior citizens. Thank you very much for your question, Judy. So at 11 a.m. this morning, NAGICO is going to be having a press conference on this particular subject matter. I have been invited to be there, and I'm asked to give a couple words with regards to the matter. I'd like to reserve my commentary to then. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Minister Richardson. We now move on to the third and final round. Bibi, you have the floor.
Thank you, Relaika. My question is for the Minister of Justice, Minister Richardson. Last week, after a question was posed here regarding the prosecutor's office and the death of Mr. Lance Thomas. You sent a press release and basically said the investigation is continuing. Based on information I've had with the report issued, there are indications that Mr. Lance Thomas was given an overdose. Based on the update that you have received, can you tell us if the prosecutor's office have decided to prosecute anyone and if that person will be probably for mental health? My other question as a follow-up, Minister, in the last recent weeks, we have had a lot of action from the police regarding their function book, their payment, etc. There was a payment. There was payments made to the police since then, but I'd like to know how far are you with the calculations and if the process is nearing its end.
Thank you very much, Bibi. First and foremost, I will not give any updates with regards to Lance Thomas further. I'm going to leave that to the prosecution service to put out any information that they may have, considering the way that matters went last week. I will not share any sort of updates with regards to. I'm leaving that to the prosecutor to share that information. Secondly, yes, we are nearing the end of our calculation process. We will have some updates within the coming weeks on the matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Richardson. Thank you, Bibi. Andrew, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ms. Roach. The question is for the Prime Minister. As far as the performance of Mr. Mingo as the CEO at the airport, is the Council of Ministers happy with the performance of Mr. Mingo since his contract is coming up for either extension or not? And also, Minister of Justice, if you can give me an update on the prison as far as the spacing is concerned. I know it's been full for some time, and some of the prisoners were transported to the Netherlands. Thank you.
I find it very interesting. The question was asked of Mr. Lambrix. Now you're asking me
Who's the shareholder representative?
about the CEO at the airport. That's a management function. As you know, there are several layers, and I have continued to comment that I will not be going into individual persons. The supervisory board of directors are the ones that will be making that determination.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs. Minister Richardson.
Yes, thank you very much. So we are moving along pretty well with our UNOPS partnership at this time, with the procurement process, the design of the prison. That's moving along pretty well. So yes, indeed, we have received unofficial notices. I've seen persons with videos, etc., filming that indeed we have moved some of our inmate population abroad. And that is going to continue. We are going to be making necessary steps because eventually we have to vacate the entire facility for us to be able to demolish it, right? So certain executive decisions have to be made as to how we're going to manage our population. And those are underway. It's a little premature for me to share that publicly at this time, but the process is moving quite well. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Richardson. Judy, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Would we have another round?
No, Judy, that is it.
Okay. Prime Minister, Pro Swaliga Foundation, they're protesting what they refer to as the Dutch interference in the Enya matter. And they've requested the State Secretary to provide government with a sound legal basis to show why a government has to be held fiscally responsible for the financial irregularities of an insurance company. Now, Pro Swaliga is saying that the Landsverordening Toezicht-Verzekering Bedrijf, the LTV, says that insurance companies fall under the purview of the CBCS. My question is, Prime Minister, do you share this view? Does government share this view and back this call by Pro Swaliga? And what is really going on at GB, Prime Minister? There's so many billing complaints still. I myself used to get both of my bills, and now all of a sudden for the past 2 months, I'm only getting my water bill, and this complaint of persons only getting one bill is very widespread. Why aren't the billing complaints, the billing issues rather sorted out more than 1 year after, and when does GB expect to get this whole issue under control? Because it's really taking a long time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Judy. I have seen the statements made by Pro Swaliga. The government of St. Martin is in discussion, as you know. We have a committee that is looking at the prospects of the impact of the ENIA situation on St. Martin and Curaçao's budget. The Central Bank of Curaçao and St. Martin falls within the responsibility of the finance ministers and by extension the governments of said countries. So it does play a role based on the central bank and ENIA's affiliation and the need for us as countries to ensure that the pensions of the persons within our countries are covered. So we are looking at all aspects of that, legally as well as financially, to see the best solution forward. We can understand concerns because at the end of the day, we have to renegotiate the loans that we have taken on behalf of the people of St. Martin to sustain the country during COVID-19. These are the loans we're talking about. The Dutch government is looking at how are we able to do that. They've made a proposal. We are looking at the proposal, and we are still in that process. So I really do not want to go into the details of such. And if legally there is grounds for us to determine that this is not something that we should be taking along, then that will be done. But seeing the fact that we have legal and financial persons, professionals working on this dossier, and that has not come forward, I will reserve the right to react to these statements at a later date when I have received that evaluation from them. So at this point, we as St. Martin are focused on ensuring that we can present a proposal to the Dutch government related to, it's a bilateral discussion between us and them. Each country has their own loans and each country has their own challenges and issues. And whilst I must say over the past, I have been very vocal about the attachment of unrelated conditions to discussions, I have been informed that this can be seen in the terms of the risk to St. Martin to be able to repay loans. So if we have to repay or pay in on behalf of legally, this impacts our ability to pay loans. So we must incorporate the plan for the resolving the ENIA issue in any projection moving forward in a multi-annual plan for our budget. So as we strive to become more economically and financially viable, we must take all risks into account. So that is what we're doing.
And GB.
As it relates to GB, I must say that I have asked the NVGEBE to put out more information. I do get complaints every now and again from persons who have received billing. When I have checked with management, they have been reassuring that they're in constant communication with persons requesting that they come in and make payments. And for people who were complaining about being cut, for instance, they agreed that they hadn't paid anything for several months. So to avoid being cut, ensure that you are making payments. I actually was able to get, and they have requested persons to come in to reconcile their bills, or if you're paying online, send your payments via email to whichever email address that they have put out to start the reconciliation, so you can get an overview of what you consume versus what you have already paid, and therefore would know what your outstanding is or if you have already paid too much. Some have received that as well. So I will look in further to how the information is being disseminated. I am surprised to hear that you were receiving 2 bills and now only receiving 1. I must say I was only receiving 1 and now recently got an overview of my electricity bill, for which I'm grateful, but I know there are others who are still in the process. What was made very, very clear in our last presentation of the challenges being faced was that a lot of what was said back in way before June, July last year, that they were so far in reconciling, etc., was inaccurate, and a lot based on not having a standard format of re-inputting information, that information did go in incorrectly, which resulted in errors. So persons would then have to then, especially if they paid online, show what they have done. Those who have paid at the location, ensure that all of those are recorded within their overviews, as it is a, let's say, hunt matter, what do you call that in English? A manual situation to fix all of the vendors, all of the clients within NVGEBE. So I have not received a latest update as to where they are in the process, but it requires really going back to the source and ensuring that each person is accurate. So I would just encourage persons to notify NVGEBE, send in their proof of payment, and hope to get their reconciliations rectified as soon as possible based on the capacity that they have at the moment. They are putting all hands on deck, and we've encouraged them to actually bring in extra persons to assist with that, ensuring that everyone is using the same template. So hopefully that will be resolved soon, and I will continue to forward to NVGB to update the population accordingly.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs. Members of the media, this does bring us to the end of the question and answer session. Any further questions can be sent directly to the Minister's Cabinet. Honorable Ministers of the Council, members of the media, radio listeners, and online viewers, this brings us to the end of the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, June 7, 2023. For rebroadcast, tune into St. Martin Gov Radio via 107.9 FM, Telems Tel TV Plus Channel 15, the official Facebook page of the Government of St. Martin, YouTube channel Government of St. Martin. For video on demand, log on to the official website, the official YouTube channel for the Government of St. Martin. On behalf of the Department of Communication and the Government of St. Martin, I'm Rolika Roach and wishing you a pleasant day further.